I never imagined the paralyzed CEO's son would find hope in a stranger's question. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. I lay on the cold hospital floor, heart pounding, as the sterile smell of antiseptic filled my lungs. My father, once a titan, now reduced to a man dependent on machines. The rhythmic beeping of his heart monitor was a cruel reminder of our stark reality. Every beep echoed in my mind, a clock ticking down to a slow, inevitable end. His eyes, once bright with ambition, now stared blankly at the ceiling. I felt the tears streaming down my face, coursing like rivers of despair. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake from this nightmare that had become our lives. But I was rooted to the floor, frozen by the weight of it all. My hands trembled as I clutched the cold metal railing beside his bed, a desperate attempt to tether myself to sanity. My friends didn't understand. They whispered behind closed doors. Their worried glances said so much. "Have you seen him lately? It's like he's not the same." It was true. My laughter felt foreign. I thought I'd keep my father's spirits up, but how could I when I was slowly crumbling in the shadows? My days bled into nights, an unending cycle of pain masked by forced smiles. Then came the stranger, a woman with wild curls and fire in her eyes. She burst into the waiting room one afternoon, seemingly out of nowhere. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on her face, a striking contrast to the sadness enveloping me. "Excuse me," she said, her voice a melody amidst the dissonance of my grief. "Where do you find hope?" I blinked, stunned. One odd question. Hope. It felt like a distant dream, a concept I could barely grasp. My mind raced, searching for an answer, seeking connections I thought were long lost. My silence spoke volumes, spinning the world into a deafening whirl of uncertainty. People shifted uncomfortably around us, their eyes darting to the floor. I felt raw exposed. A lump formed in my throat, as if the question was a needle probing the soft flesh of my soul. I could hardly breathe. What is she doing here? And why was she asking me? An electric tension hung in the air. I glanced at my father's lifeless form. "Oh, ¿cómo podría encontrar esperanza ahora?" I wanted to lash out to protect the tiny flicker of warmth left inside me. Instead, I stared deep into her curious eyes, drawn in like a moth to a flame. Could she truly understand the darkness I lived in? Could anyone? The room felt stifling, the weight of her question wrapping around us tightly. I found myself wanting to respond, to give her some thingy-think-off substance. But what could I say? How could I impart wisdom when I was at my lowest? And then she smiled. Not just any smiley, a radiant, almost heartbreaking smile. I caught my own reflection in her eyes, still clinging to flickers of hope. What was happening to me? In that moment, something shifted. A hushed whisper of possibility coursed through my veins. Was I on the brink of something profound? Just as quickly, doubt crept back in, freezing me again in my own tragedy. The world blurred around us, voices fading into the background, leaving only her question lingering between us. But before I could gather my thoughts, she leaned in closer, her voice dropping low. "You don't have to do this alone." Just 4 words, but they resonated deep within me. I hadn't even answered her yet. A part of me wanted to scream, to ask how she dared to approach me when my world was in ruins. But another part of Maya, part one hadn't felt indigestinable with the unsettling thrill of being seen. What if she was right? What if there was a glimmer of hope lingering in this darkness? I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. And in that silence, with the weight of her gaze still locked on mine, a revelation hit me. I was on the edge of a crossroads, a moment that could reshape everything I knew and feared. But which path would I take? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The hum of soft voices returned, wrapping around us like a veil as I struggled to find my own. The stranger, with her vibrant spirit, seemed to cast a ray of light in my otherwise dim world. As I fought to articulate my thoughts, my gaze drifted back to my father. The machines that tethered him to life had become my constant companions, and their relentless rhythm underscored every moment of uncertainty I faced. "Can I share a story with you?" she asked, her eyes studying me intently. "It might not be much, but sometimes a single story can shine a little light." I nodded, unsure what else to do. Part of me wanted to retreat, yet again, into the cocoon of grief I had woven tightly. Yet, the other part, the part she had ignited, yearned to hear that first flicker of someone else's journey. She began to talk, her voice soothing and animated. She spoke of her own father, an artist who had been paralyzed after a stroke, robbed of his ability to paint. At first, it was devastating. I thought I had lost him completely, she recounted, her tone dipping into shadows of pain. But then I realized he was still there, just differently. We found new ways to connect. We discovered art in places I never would have thought to look. We created a new kind of beauty. Her words enveloped me, softening the hard edges of my anguish. I could imagine her father, once vivid in color, now muted and struggling. Yet it dawned on me that perhaps there was still a chance to rediscover my father too. I clung to her story, hoping it might offer a way for me to breathe life back into my relationship with him. As she finished, a sudden sharp noise pierced our bubbly. A crash echoed down the hallway, a flurry of urgency rushing past. The strangers wheeled their cart toward a room where frantic voices rose, and the warmth of her presence began to wane. She closed her eyes briefly, as if collecting herself before speaking again. "I'm here every Tuesday, you know. If you'd like to talk again, just look for me." I felt an unexpected pang of hope collide with my fear. "Wait, what's your name?" I managed to ask, my fingers twitching with a sudden need to reach out. "Lena." "Lena," I repeated, savoring the syllables as if tying them to my own tangled thoughts. I wanted to hold on to her like a buoy in stormy seas. But before I could say more, she turned to follow the uproar down the corridor. For a brief moment, I watched her figure dissolve into the sea of chaos, leaving behind a whisper of warmth. Days blurred into sleepless nights again, yet a spark lingered, a hesitant thought that grew bolder with time. As I sat at my father's bedside, I couldn't shake the idea that there were layers of him I hadn't unraveled yet. I began to notice the faintest flicker of his fingers when I spoke to him about the things he loved in life. The stock market, business strategies, and even his beloved Boston Red Sox. I decided to bring in an old photo album, one thick with dusty memories of my father in pristine suits beside the oak desk that held his empire. I replayed moments of triumph and laughter, leaning into memories that made my heart ache and soar at the same time. One afternoon, while I flipped through the pages, recounting stories to him softly, I looked up and met his glassy stare. My heart grabbed hold of something. Was it recognition? A flicker of acknowledgement? I couldn't be sure, and yet I pressed on, desperate to find a glimmer of connection. Each word seemed to resonate in the room, healing faintly as I wove tales of our shared past. But just as I thought I could witness a breakthrough, the unthinkable happened. The heart monitor next to him resonated a new rhythm, sharp and deafening, announcing a change that chilled me to the bone. The overhead lights suddenly flickered, and panic surged through the air as nurses rushed in, voices frantic. I was paralyzed with fear, the album slipping through my fingers as I grasped for answers in the chaos around me. "Stand back," a nurse shouted as they worked on my dad. The wild hope that had begun to bloom now felt hopelessly out of reach. A flower shattering under the weight of a sudden storm. I fumbled for my phone, ready to call for help, but my hands were trembling. Amidst the turmoil, the sound of his heart monitor beeping, then erratically slowing clashed against the urgency of expert hands that moved around him. In that moment of impending despair, my fragmented thoughts raced back to Lena, a perfect stranger whose words had crept into my heart. She had spoken of creativity through darkness. What would she do in a moment like this? Would she remind me that hope still existed, even when it seemed beyond reach? Just as an overwhelming wave of despair threatened to drown me, the weight intensified. I could almost feel the emptiness blooming in my chest, but then something extraordinary caught my attention. Just beyond the commotion, I saw a nurse's poised determination, the encouragement wrapped in her demeanor, as if she were willing hope back into the room. And just like that, a piercing realization broke through. Hope might come in forms I could not yet comprehend. As I stood paralyzed by terror, I knew I had to fight to find my way back to that light no matter the chaos. Then came a voice through the blur words that ground me. "Stay with us, Mr. Thompson. Fight." I leaned forward, holding on to that flicker that had started from Stranger's question. It wasn't just my father who needed hope. It was my turn to reach back into the darkness and find a way through. That moment of realization punctured my despair until it both stunned and invigorated me. But just as I began to reclaim my footing, a figure appeared in the doorway, a silhouette against the light. I felt my heart leap, and with that leap came a sudden shaka, haunting déjà vu. The familiar curls, the fire in the eyes. With a sense of impending revelation, I found myself grasping for air as I met Lena's gaze once again, her presence as electric as before. This time, fate wasn't just offering a question, it was delivering a proclamation. Hope, unexpected and fierce, was ready to reclaim its place among the shadows. And with that thought comes the most profound uncertainty, yet could this moment truly reshape everything for all of us? The light flickered again, casting shifting shadows across the sterile hospital room. It felt as if time were suspended, balancing precariously on the precipice of a desperate breath. I could hardly process what was unfolding in front of me. With Lena poised in the doorway, the atmosphere thickened with unspoken promises and unshed tears. The rhythmic beeping of my father's heart monitor echoed a frantic tempo. Yet in that chaos, I felt anchored by her presence. "Stay with him," she urged, her voice steady amidst the turmoil. I could see it in her Aise's spark of conviction that ignited something within me. Stay with him, and remind him of the fight he needs to hold on to. I looked back at my father, the frail figure that had been my protector and guide, now seemingly lost in an abyss. The hands of the nurses worked deftly, though desperation clung to the air. Yet, as Lena's assurance wrapped around me like a warm embrace, I fought against the urge to crumble. It was the very fight I needed to channel for my father, even if it felt like hope was a distant memory. "Dad," I managed to croak out, my voice breaking under the weight of everything that had transpired. "Please fight. I need you to fight. We have so much left to do. The Sox, remember? We need to go to Fenway Park, you promised. We'd go together." Each word hung in the air, infused with a deep longing that I couldn't contain. It was as though I were reaching across an unseen chasm, pleading for him to grasp my outstretched hand. But the moments ticked by, hollow and aching, and I felt all the color drain from my world as silence lingered, only punctuated by the frantic beeping. Then, as if responding to a cue I could not see, a flicker passed across my father's face, a muscle twitch in his brow, a subtle line of recognition lighting his features as if I had stirred something inside him that lay dormant. Hope surged within me, a tide I hadn't anticipated, rushing to fill the void where fear had taken root. Lena stepped closer, her presence grounding. "Just keep talking to him," she encouraged, a ripple of determination in her tone. "You're doing so well, even if the fight feels impossible. Speak your truth. Show him he's not alone." Taking a deep breath, I felt my heart hammer against my ribcage, overwhelmed yet buoyed by her unyielding spirit. I recalled the stories I shared earlier, the memories that had once brought smiles, and I began to share more our old summer trips, barbecues in the backyard, moments of laughter that echoed through the house. As I filled the void with reminders of joy, the beeping of the monitor began to steady, just slightly. It wasn't just rhythmic, it felt intentional. But my bubble of hope was punctured as the nurse's expressions dimmed. "We need to take him for a procedure," one said, practical yet urgent. "We'll do everything we can." They began to wheel him away, and an ache unfurled within me, looking back at my father as he was pulled from reach. The uncertainty crashed over me, dragging down all the warmth that had settled in my chest moments before. "No, please," I yelled, desperation clawing at my throat, but they were already moving, their world operating at a different speed. "Wait." Lena stepped forward, her hands outstretched toward the team. "I want to stay with him." I blinked, not sure where this came from, and my heart bobbed between panic and disbelief. "You don't have to, but—" She cut me off, her voice a soothing melody. "I want to. You're his son, and your strength is vital. He'll stay here, and talk to him while you take a moment." Hell, since your absence, that a current of gratitude swept through me. It was an unimaginable gift, one that felt right despite the wild swirl of chaos around us. I nodded, the beginnings of relief washing over me. I stepped back as they wheeled my father away, uncertainty gripping my insides tighter. Panic nestled in my chest, but amid that fear, I clung to the understanding that I couldn't just disappear. Lena turned back to me, and for a fleeting moment, something unspoken passed between USA shared understanding, perhaps a bond forged in the crucible of our lives' storms. "You'll be okay," she assured softly. "I'll be okay. Just breathe." As they disappeared down the hallway, I felt the strain of emotions clawing at my heart. I took a few steps backward, leaning against the wall as if it could somehow yield the balance I lacked. I felt the tendrils of hope entwining tightly around my heart, but would they dissolve as quickly as they had come? A few moments later, I couldn't help but look down the hallway, uncertain and unsure. The sterile lights flickered above me, dimming the shadows of despair that surrounded me. Suddenly, a commotion rose from behind the closed doors, frantic yet strangely familiar then. A single shriek pierced through, a cry that echoed with terror, followed immediately by silence. I shot upright, my heart thrumming violently as dread clawed its way up my throat. The sliding doors burst open, a nurse stumbling out, face pale as if the very life had been siphoned from her. My pulse quickened, and in that gut-wrenching moment, the illusions of hope I had been weaving frayed, threatening to shatter entirely. "Is he?" I stammered, my voice wavering. "Code Blue," she gasped, rushing past me as I felt the world tilt on its axis. The words hung around me, cold and solid. The bottom dropped out from my reality as the weight of those two simple words sent me reeling. It was all crashing down again. The belief I had fought so hard to build annihilated in the span of mere seconds. Another chase toward the abyss began, and, as the darkness clawed its way back, I could only fight to remain standing in a moment filled with shadows and overwhelming uncertainty. What would the silence mean? And who would remain when the storm finally passed? The sterile, fluorescent lights above buzzed as I leaned against the cold wall, the words "Code Blue" reverberating hauntingly in my ears. Time halted as the frantic pace of the hospital melded with the chaotic rhythm of my heart. My hands trembled, fingers gripping tightly to the edges of the windowsill. Just beyond the glass, patients ambled through the corridors, blissfully unaware of the rising tempest threatening to engulf my world. Yet, beneath the swelling dread, I found a flicker of clarity something deep within stirred. I recalled the memories I'd recounted from my father, the laughter, the warmth of shared moments, and the lessons had instilled in me over the years. Those precious remembrances whispered of resilience, urging me to harness the strength that lingered in them. I exhaled a shuddering breath, desperate to keep my thoughts afloat, fighting against the tide threatening to pull me under. "Excuse me," a voice broke through my reverie, soft yet assertive. I turned to see a nurse approach, her expression a blend of sympathy and urgency. She had seen me before me, worry palpable, drenched in an aura of despair. Are you family?" "Yes," I managed to reply, my voice wavering slightly. "There's still hope," she said quickly, her eyes earnest as they searched mine. "Your father is a fighter. We've encountered challenges before. Sometimes it means we need to push through the storm before we can find calm." I nodded, even as her words felt as if they were being etched into stone. Hope. It hung over me like a fragile glass ornament, teetering on the edge of shattering, but somehow, inexplicably, still suspended. "Can I be there?" My voice was a whisper, yet it thundered loudly in my conscience. "Can I go back in?" A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but she nodded. "Just for a moment. Stay strong." I inhaled sharply, instinctively raising my chin in determination as I followed her down the corridor. My feet felt like they were trudging through molasses, each step heavy with a burgeoning dread. As I stepped through the door into the chaos that surrounded my father, a sense of the surreal washed over Medho's beeping machines and bright lights felt alien, yet comforting, offering a paradox of unease and familiarity. The room buzzed with urgency. Nurses shifted in a somber dance, yet my gaze zeroed in on my father. His frail form lay resplendent in stark contrast to the fluorescent glow, the machines beeping and whirring as if they too sensed the gravity of the moment. Through the haze, I could hear the muffled voices of the medical team, their instructions overlapping, a symphony of both chaos and compassionate urgency. "Dad," I shouted, my hand instinctively reaching for his. I cradled his limp fingers in mine, feeling their frailty echo through my own being. "Imhia, you need to fight, please. Remember Fenway? I can't do this without you." I willed the warmth of my presence to seep into him, fueling the life within. The chaos momentarily faded into silence as I poured my heart out, memories spilling forth like ink across a canvas. "Do you remember the last time we were there? Watching the Sox play against the Yankees? You argued until your voice cracked about the ump's call, and my voice trailed off, caught in an emotional chokehold. I had to keep talking. I needed him to know he was not alone. You gave me the best advice I've ever received, Dad. You told me to stand tall and be brave. You need to be brave now. For me." Suddenly, a nurse shifted beside me, her eyes sincere, yet filled with palpable worry. "We need you to step away for just a moment, sir," she said gently. "We're trying to stabilize him." The panic surged anew, clawing at my throat. "No, I can't. He needs me." I shook my head, unwilling to let go, but reluctantly felt the pull of her persistence. Lena's words echoed in my mind, pulling me back from the edge. "Stay strong." I willed myself to breathe, to permit them to do their work, to listen to what they were saying, even as if my father's heartbeat faded into something quieter. As I retreated, my gaze never left his face, willing him to acknowledge me, to somehow call back from the abyss of that moment. But amidst the noise and frenetic urgency, it happened a heartbeat. A slow, steady beat emerged beneath the chaos, and it resonated in my ribcage. But then my focus latched onto something, an unusual stillness coalescing around the chaos. I leaned in, squinting as I watched the nurse typing, the monitor pulsing gently. Something about the numbers felt indescribably off. I wanted to scream for clarity, my heart thudding audibly as realization washed over me. The tension in the room doubled in an instant, and before I knew it, I felt the weight of the world shift dangerously under my feet. A strained voice broke through. "We need a decision immediately." I breathed in sharply, dread settling in my gut. What decision? My pulse quickened, thoughts spiraling wildly. What were they not telling me? As the medical team crowded around my father, the beeping shifted to a frantic pace, ushering in an unfamiliar sense of loss before it had even manifested. Deep within me, panic strangled the remnants of hope. I realized I was standing on the precipice of a decision I never wanted to face, with the specter of what loomed hanging heavily above us all. And just as I began to take a step toward them, a figure appeared in the doorway, a stranger, with eyes full of compassion, staring with a knowing vulnerability. In that moment, I had no idea how their question would unravel everything. "That I asked, this your father?" They asked softly, a hint of understanding mingling with concern. My heart tightened, unsure of the path ahead, yet intensely aware that this stranger's question might alter everything I thought I knew. The weight of the moment felt as if it had suspended time itself. The figure standing in the doorway was unlike anyone I had encountered in this sterile, emotion-laden space. They exuded an aura of calm, an ethereal stillness that tugged at a part of me desperately seeking solace amid the chaos surrounding my father. "Yes, it is," I managed to reply, my voice barely above a murmur, laced with uncertainty. I stepped back, distancing myself from the noise just enough to focus on the stranger. Their eyes, deep and understanding, seemed to pierce through the fog of my despair, drawing me in closer. "I am Dr. Chun," they said, extending a hand, an unexpected gesture of kindness in this frenetic atmosphere. "I specialize in critical care, and I've been following your father's case closely." My heart raced, a flicker of hope igniting within me. "What do you mean? Is he? He's fighting, but we're at a crossroads," Dr. Chen interrupted gently, their voice steady yet filled with care. "Sometimes when we face such daunting challenges, it can weigh heavily on families. But it's essential to know that you're not alone in this decision." "What decision?" The word fell from my lips, trembling with fear as that sense of dread clawed at me again. Whether to continue interventions or transition to comfort care, Dr. Chen elucidated, their expression unyielding yet tender. "It can be heartbreaking, but it may be time to think about what your father would want." Those words swirled in the air between us, their gravity encasing my heart in an icy grip. I felt frozen, each breath feeling heavier than the last. Somewhere in my mind, the laughter of Fenway echoed, but it was a thin sound, almost drowned out by the looming shadows of uncertainty. "You wouldn't want to suffer," I whispered, a reality I had dodged realizing until now. "Exactly," Dr. Chen replied softly, their gaze unwavering. "I've watched your father. I saw the compassion he brought to others, the way he fought through the darkest moments. You carry a piece of that bravery, too. But sometimes allowing someone to find peace can be the bravest decision of all." That I nodded, but inside, a tumult had erupted. Suddenly, memories flooded in fishing trips with my father, the way he guided me through life's storms, and those warm summer nights when everything felt right. I thought of a best friend who had once whispered about the beauty of letting go, and how my father had always believed in cherishing both life and death as parts of a greater whole. As I inhaled shakily, I felt they were right, and yet I couldn't shake the spiraling fear that was consuming me. I couldn't lose him. But what if the words hung heavily, the fear of what-ifs and second guesses swirling within me? "Those what-ifs will always exist," Dr. Chen said with a gentle nod. "What you need to do is honor your father's wishes and his spirit. His fight has been a reflection of the love you share. Utilize this moment to choose how you want to celebrate him, instead of merely focusing on the fight. What does that celebration look like for you?" In that moment, I recalled the countless lessons interwoven through the fabric of our relationship. Life was a tapestry birthed from laughter and love, stitched together with the threads of pain and growth. I realized I could guide these threads into something beautiful, even in the face of impending loss. "Can I talk to him?" I asked, desperation creeping back in. "I need him to know I'm here." Of course. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "Take your time. The machines will keep us connected for now." I stepped away. I caught glimpses of compassion in the eyes of the nurses, the echoes of shared sorrow lingering in the sterile air. I returned to my father's side, and the familiar humming of machines embraced me like an old friend. "Dad," I whispered, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks, a release I hadn't realized I needed. "I don't know how to do this without you. I haven't prepared myself for a world where I can't hear your voice or feel your hand in mine. You taught me to keep pushing through the darkness, but now I don't know." The steady beeping rhythm of the machines felt both comforting and haunting, drumming a song only I could hear. A sense of understanding tickled the edges of my mind. My father was there, not just a collection of breaths and beeps, but in everything he had ever given: meth, laughter, the memories, and the spirit to fight. Even when the battle changed shape, "I will honor you," Dad, I promised, my voice a mere whisper against the backdrop of machines. I will carry forward all you taught me, no matter the path we choose. I promise to keep you alive within me, no matter what comes. You mean everything to me. And just as I spoke those words, the door swung open again, allowing a wave of cool air to wash over me. My heart leaped into my throat as a nurse called out, "Dr. Chun, we have an emergency in room 201. We need backup immediately." The sudden urgency in her voice punctured the moment like a needle to a balloon. An undeniable tension hung in the room as Dr. Chen glanced back at me, their gaze steady yet alarmed. "Stay here. They'll be right back," they assured, the gravity of their departure sinking in. I felt suddenly alone with my father, the world outside spinning with chaos, leaving me cradled in a space that felt like it was about to fracture at any moment. Time itself felt unsteady, and I needed to make a choice, one that could shift the path of my life forever. Would I cling to the hope of revival, or give my father the freedom to transition into peace? In the fragile silence that followed, a cacophony of emotions swirled within me, igniting the question of legacy and love as the storm of confusion raged around us. The choice loomed larger than life, pulsing like the heartbeat I longed to hear. And as I wavered between love and impending loss, I wondered if the echoes of my decision would reverberate through the corridors of time long after the machines ceased to whirl. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, creating a sterile hum that matched the unsettling rhythm of my heart. Alone in the room, each second stretched into infinity as I clung to my father's hand, its warmth reassuring yet increasingly fragile. I watched as his chest rose and fell, a reminder that as much as it felt like we were suspended in time, the world outside this room was moving at an alarming pace. In the whirlwind of uncertainty and pain, flashes of memories appeared like fragmented dreams. I saw my father laughing uproariously at my terrible attempt at cooking, the way he illuminated every family gathering with his stories, gifting our lives with meaning. Yet now, amidst the beeping of machines and the solitude of my sorrow, a single thought pushed through. What would he want me to do next? My thoughts spiraled as I recalled Dr. Chen's words. Would honoring him truly mean letting go? The notion felt daunting, monstrous even. Then a small voice seeped into the chaos, a tender reflection of resilience that reminded me of the strength he had always shown. Celebrate the life he lived. I found myself repeating in whispers, not just the battle he fought. Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed outside the door, breaking my reverie. A young intern arrived, his eyes wide, sketching the chaos that awaited outside into his worried expression. "I'm here to check on Mr. Morgan," he announced, and in that moment, I caught sight of something raw and hopeful in his gaze. A kindness rested there, unasked and unguarded. "His name is Thomas," I said softly as I gestured toward my father's slumbering figure. Do you think he knows him here?" My voice cracked under the weight of the question, tinged with desperate longing. The intern took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts like a lifeline. "Sometimes, even when they seem far away, they can still feel the presence of their loved ones," he replied. "It's like a heartbeat that connects you, even if you both are in different places." That metaphoric heartbeat echoed within me, resonating with hope. I allowed it to seep into the edges of my despair, lifting the weight that pressed down on my chest. I need him to feel it. I need him to know he is not alone. With a nod, the intern leaned closer to my father, tapping a few buttons on the machine beside him. Talking to them might help share those stories, those moments, and help feel your love, he encouraged. Suddenly, I felt a new surge of determination encapsulate me. I took a deep breath and pushed through the wave of emotions. "Dad," I began, my voice stronger now, echoing not only my fear, but also a treasure trove of love. "Remember the time we hiked up that mountain, and you told me life is like climbing full of challenges, but also beautiful views? Or the fishing trips when I always caught the smallest fish, but you still yelled, 'That's my boy,' from the shore? You're my greatest adventure." The intern's eyes softened, reflecting compassion as I spoke. I shared memories that wove our lives together the way my father taught me to be brave, how he never let me feel less than enough. With every recollection, I felt fragments of my heart knit back together, filling the hollow void left by despair. Yet, amid the tender moments, a heaviness threatened to spill over. Outside the door, voices grew louder, the urgency surging with each passing second. I knew the longer I stalled facing the inevitable decision, the harder it would become. Each memory pulled at me for clarity, for the what next to clarity I was terrified to confront. In that instant, the door opened again, revealing Dr. Chun. Their face was a mixture of exhaustion and urgency. "I'm sorry for the delay," they said, quickly scanning the room. "I just wanted to check on you, see if you thought more about your father's care, Doctor." "Chun," I exclaimed, as if I had found a lifeline amid the storm. I was just telling him all the stories, but my words tumbled out as fear gnawed at me again. "How do you make such a big decision? How do I know what's right?" Dr. Chin stepped closer, their demeanor steady, like an anchor in turbulent waters. "Remember, it's about choosing what honors him. The answer lives within you, waiting to be discovered in the love you have shared." Before I could respond, the intern's expression shifted, and he stepped back. "Excuse me, but I need to attend to something urgently. If you need anything else," he trailed off, leaving behind a lingering sense of camaraderie, a connection forged in shared vulnerability that I watched him leave, and that moment of kindness felt like a gentle tap on my shoulder, urging me to rise from the depths of my fear. As hope flickered again, a realization set in the decision before me wasn't solely about loss. It was about honoring the life we had built together. But just then, the rhythmic beeping of the machines changed, becoming erratic, chaotically weaving through the whispers of my mind. My heart raced as I turned to Dr. Chun in alarm. "What's happening? I need to assess him right now." "Stay calm." Their voice shifted immediately into a clinical tone, urgency lacing every word. I watched them rush toward my father. A rush of uncertainty seeped back in, flooding my mind with a new wave of panic. Was this it? Would I have to make the decision before I felt ready? In that haze of emotion, as I wrestled with despair and unanswered questions, a chilling voice broke through the chaos. "We're losing him." The phrase chilled me to the bone, igniting a wave of panic within that surged dangerously. Time stood still as my heart plummeted into my stomach. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run, anything but stand still as the world flipped upside down. "Is there still time?" I breathed, feeling the world around me flicker between hope and uncertainty. The fading sound of the machines felt ominous, taunting me with every drawn-out second. Just then, as Dr. Chun continued their work, I felt a pinprick of clarity surge once more, fighting through the haze that I needed to choose now not just for me, but for my father. My next words would carry the weight of love against the tides of conclusion. And then, on the edges of that moment, I sensed something flickering, a whisper of connection, a promise still tethered. It pulled at my heart, leading me toward Joe's affirmations of a life embraced, filled with love and laughter, as I discovered anew what it meant to let go. But as I opened my mouth to finally speak, to tell my father everything I wished for him, there was a sudden silence that enveloped the room. The machines stilled, and I realized that I was right on the precipice, teetering between what I hoped for and what I feared most. "Dad," I breathed, a new weight pressing at my chest. I chose before I could finish my thought. Just outside the room, chaos erupted anew. Desperate cries, the scuffle of hurried footsteps. Something was changing, and deep down, I couldn't ignore the feeling that this moment was leading us toward an unexpected revelation, a secret waiting to unfurl, one that could forever alter the course I had been pursuing. As I stood there, gripping my father's hand tighter, I realized nothing would ever be the same again. The sterile air thickened. The sunlight that had previously pushed its way through the slats in the blinds now seemed to dim, shrouding the room in an unsettling gloom. The noise outside crescendoed, and I could hear muffled voices, the kind that dripped with urgency but offered little comfort. My heart raced, anticipation morphing into dread as my eyes flicked between the life signs of my father and the door, waiting for some anything to reveal what the source of the commotion was. Stay focused, I reminded myself, tightening my grip on my father's hand, but the fight between hope and despair rumbled inside me like a summer storm rolling in, heavy with unseen threats. My voice trembled, but I pressed on. I was saying, Dad, I need to let you go cause that's the kind of love you've shown me. The kind that puts your heart first. But just as I was about to weave the next memory, the intercom crackled to life. A voice overlapped with static, cutting clear through the noise. Code blue in room 302. I repeat, code blue in room 302. I felt the world shift, a tectonic plate of my reality sliding beneath my feet, leaving me teetering on an emotional precipice. What does that mean? My voice came out in a whisper, the chill in my bones telling me exactly what it meant. Doctor Chen's face hardened, their eyes snapping to the door, as if weighing the urgency of the situation with my father's life in precarious balance. I need you to stay right here, they said quickly, rushing toward the door, but not before shooting me a look filled with something like regret. The shadows in the room seemed to coalesce around me, suffocating as a sense of despair washed over me like a tidal wave. I swallowed hard, desperate for clarity, longing for the connection I had desperately clung to minutes ago, yet now feeling the strands slip away with the raging storm outside. Don't go, please, I murmured, but Dr. Chan was already out the door, leaving me with nothing but the sounds of the machines and the echoes of unresolved, unspoken thoughts. I leaned over my father's prone form, the beeping monitoring his heart, stabbing sharply in my psyche. Dad, I need you to hold on, I pleaded, feeling the ache in my throat. You've always taught me to fight, to be brave. Remember our trips to the ocean? You told me the waves may be strong, but the tide always returns. Each word was conjured with the weight of belief, an incantation of hope that transcended the closeness of mortality pressing down on us. But the world narrowed to the rhythmic sound of beeping, dragging me into an intricate web of denial. I wished for someone to tell me the right thing to do and to make all this disappear. Just then, a hand slipped gently on my Shadera's soft and unexpected presence. Turning, I found the intern from earlier standing beside me, his eyes filled with unfathomable empathy. I began, hesitated, and stepped closer, filling the space with warmth. I just saw what's happening. It's a code blue. My voice trembled, forcing the words out. He nodded solemnly. It means there's a medical emergency, and right now, they need to stabilize him. My mind raced to keep up with the torrent of emotions swirling. Fear, anger, desperation, love. If they can stabilize him, what then? How do I make this decision? His gaze was unwavering, like a lighthouse in a storm. Sometimes, hope rises from the places we least expect, he said quietly, grounding me in his presence. Whatever is happening out there won't change what you've built with your father. Conversations, laughter, life. It's all still there. The truth in his voice wrapped around my heart, reminding me of a flicker of resilience deeply embedded in our lives, fighting through the overwhelming despair. I wish I could just let him know, I murmured, lost in the possibilities of reviving the bond we once shared, a connection that could still be felt even through the veil separating us. Suddenly, the door burst open again, revealing Dr. Chun and a flurry of nurses wheeling in equipment, urgency palpable in every movement. Step back, someone shouted, and I felt my pulse leap into my throat, all words stifled, eclipsed by fear. As they worked, my world slipped further from my grasp, each sound of machinery blending into a deafening roar. But in the upheaval, an unexpected glint caught my attention. My father's hand, loose and resting atop the sheets, suddenly twitched, as if responding to a silent plea. Dad? I breathed, edging closer, almost wanting to reach through the chaos. Please fight. Fight for me. Time stretched thin. Goodbyes and reverberations of fate danced like shadows in my mind, oscillating between what I longed to make known and the gravity of unsaid words. The moment hung suspended, as if teetering on the edge of eternity. The intern stepped closer again, sensing the spark of something ancient and powerful blooming in the air. "Your heart speaks louder than any machine ever could," he said softly. "Every heartbeat is a whisper of the love you have for him." Before I could grasp the weight of his words, a jarring noise burst through the tens Iona chaotic eruption that felt strangely out of place. Then, a piercing scream echoed from the hallway, something dark and terrifying, halting everything for a moment. The chatter in the hall quieted, leaving an eerie silence that swallowed me whole. "What was that?" I stammered, dread pooling like lead in my gut. Moments later, a nurse jolted into the room, eyes wide and frantic. "We're going to need more hands over here," she yelled, and instantly chaos descended again. As I watched the scene before me, dread curling in my stomach, I felt a chilling certainty settle in that the battle ahead was not only for my father. The reality of something bigger was shaping on the horizon, threatening to unravel everything I thought I had control over. Suddenly, a realization hit me like a runaway train. Was I really ready to face the truth waiting outside the door? And just what lay beyond that chaos murmuring in the dark, grappling with the uncharted weight of my decisions? Each second stretched, and the world around me fragmented, spiraling toward an unforeseen revelation that could irrevocably change everything. The chaos in the room surged like an unrelenting tide, washing over me as if every heartbeat were a drop added to the storm threatening to drown us all. Eyes darted frantically across the scene, and as the staff continued their work, a primal fear gripped my heart. This moment felt curiously suspended, as if we were all holding our collective breath in the grim anticipation of what lay ahead. The intern remained by my side, a bewildered witness to the chaos that had now enveloped us. "Stay close," he urged softly, as if his presence could somehow anchor me amidst the turmoil. I clung to that comfort, the strength of his steady gaze, even when the unfamiliar scream lingered in my mind, echoing like a haunting specter. Why father lay beneath an unfeeling blanket of clinical white, breathing shallowly. The murmurs of the onlookers faded away, replaced by the chaotic symphony of machines beeping and the frantic footsteps echoing in the hallway. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely breaking through the cacophony. "Please fight for me, Dad." Yet as if in defiance of my hope, the machines grew more frantic, the rhythm of my father's heartbeat on the monitor shifting beyond recognition. My heart sank with every change, every slide of the numbers upward and downward that seemed to mock my pleas. It felt like our shared history, our laughter, our lessons, all fading into an inky void, swallowed by an impenetrable dark. "You promised you'd be here, Dad. You can't leave me now. Just breathe," the intern murmured, a hint of urgency creeping into his tone. "He needs you to hold on to that belief." In that moment, sparks of hope flickered in the back of my mind, the remnants of shared memories flashing before me like hurried images sitting on the porch, conversations that stretched late into the night, his laughter mixing with the rustling leaves. Each memory a lifeline anchoring me amidst waves of uncertainty. As the urgency intensified in the room, Dr. Chen's voice broke through the noise. "We need to stabilize him now." Each word was sharpened with a command, filled with the gravity of life and death. There was no question now. The battle had escalated, and I was left clinging to the threads of tenacity and love that tethered my father to this world. Suddenly, another nurse rushed in, her face pained but resolute. She grabbed my gaze and held it steady. "You have to leave the room," she said urgently. "We can't have you here now. It's too risky." "Risky? What are you talking about?" I asked, bewilderment sharpening every word. "He's my father. I can't just please." The intern placed a firm hand on my shoulder, attempting to guide me, and in that first instance of resistance, something shifted within me. "You need to let the medical team do their work. You can't help him from here." In an instinctive act, I allowed myself to be drawn back into the hallway, and it felt as though a piece of my soul was torn away. "No," I breathed, the realization crashing upon me. "I can't just wait. I can't lose him without saying goodbye." They led me outside, the fluorescent buzz of artificial lights a stark contrast to the vibrant sun painted against the hospital's exterior. I stumbled into the small waiting area, the muted hum of silence engulfing me. A kind-hearted volunteer stood there, offering coffee to anxious families, but I barely noticed as I sank into a nearby chair, my heart a turbulent sea. Waves of confusion crashed over me as if I were surfacing from water, gasping for breath. The intern followed me out, concern etched into his features. "Look, I know it feels like the ground is falling away from you, but you've already been a comfort to him just by being there. Trust the staff. They're doing everything they can." His words, sincere and steady, began to sink in, slowly replacing the tempest of despair with a frail flicker of warmth. I took a moment, breathing in the cool air of the waiting room, trying to follow his lead. "They're fighting for him," I murmured, feeling the tremor in my voice. "But it feels like everything is outside my control." "There are many kinds of battles," he replied, gently. "Maybe the best thing you can do is hold on to hope. It exists even in moments of uncertainty." Just as I began to find some measure of solace in his comforting words, a frantic buzz broke out in the hallway, a cacophony of voices that spiraled into a rising tide of anxiety. My heart lurched again as I turned, recognizing the urgency, and my breath caught in my throat at the sight of Dr. Chun barreling down the corridor. "Get me a crash cart." The doctor barked, and all the warmth that had begun to kindle within me extinguished as sheer panic surged anew. It was a visceral blow that drove deep into my chest, forcing me back into the realm of reality, the one where I must confront the fragility of life, intertwined with my own desperate need to say goodbye. The intern's hand found mine, grounding me with an unshakable resolve against the chaos. "Stay strong," he urged, and for reasons I didn't fully understand, I clung to that hand through the uncertainty bearing down upon us. Just then, an emergency room attendant rushed past us, their face a mask of determination. And then something folded inside, a harsh reminder that life was teetering on the knife's edge, each part of me screaming for strength, for the drive to fight against the tides of fate. Suddenly, everything escalated into unfathomable proportions. "What about my dad?" I spluttered breathlessly, attempting to peer back into the fray, my heart a war drum beating louder amid the chaos. But as if the universe conspired to keep the truth hidden, a sudden explosion of sound erupted in a guttural roar followed by a chilling silence. An incongruous crashing noise, almost primal, rippled down the corridor. "Stay here," the intern urged me, but it felt like an impossible request as the ground beneath me quaked with swirling emotions, shaping the uncertainty that loomed ahead. I took one step into the fray, my heart pounding in defiance of the chaos, only to be met with a sight that would change everything. A figure in scrubs hesitating at the edge of the chaos, the echoes of grief coloring their expression. "Please, tell me he's okay," I pleaded, focusing every ounce of my energy on piercing through the maelstrom. But the moment that hung in the air as they glanced to the side, the shadows of uncertainty washing across their face, ignited my fear in an all-consuming blaze, because in that moment, a realization struck me harder than anything that had come before, a revelation that hinted at a darkness beyond mere medical crisis. And my voice caught in my throat as I understood, for this chaos was but a shard of a much darker truth, one I never anticipated as I faced the echoes of my father's heart hanging by a thread, along with secrets that awaited their unearthing. The hardened resolve began to fracture as dread filled each breath. How high was the price of hope, and what chilling truths lurked just beyond the door of this sanctuary, a sanctuary that felt more like a gateway into the shadows that had long haunted my family. My heart raced as the magnitude of what lay ahead clawed at me, an insistent whisper in the darkness, begging to be heard. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as I stood frozen, my gaze steadfast on the figure in scrubs. The air was thick with an unshakable tension, and every whisper of uncertainty hung heavily like a storm cloud ready to burst. I felt the intern's presence slip from reassuring to distant, a soft echo overshadowed by the pounding of my heart that resounded in my ears. I began, the words catching like shards of glass in my throat. The figure looked back at me, their eyes filled with a blend of compassion and something else, something heavy that burdened the air between us. It was as if they carried a weight much too large to shoulder alone. "Please, just tell me the truth," I begged, desperation spilling over the edges of my calm facade. In that moment, they stepped closer, and I noticed the way their hands trembled slightly as they motioned for me to follow. We need to talk," they said, each word steeped in a gravity that cloaked my heart in fear. Each step towards the quiet room felt like a descent into an abyss where darkness thrived. I began to protest, but the intern's hand gripped my shoulder, anchoring me, urging me forward with quiet strength. "You need to know. Whatever it is, you deserve to hear it." Swallowing hard, I let the attendant lead me to a small, windowless room, the kind built for heavy conversations. It felt more like a confessional than a sanctuary. When the door closed behind me, the sound echoed, sealing away the chaos outside and trapping us in a cocoon of shadows. "Your father, he's facing severe complications," the attendant began, and even as the words escaped their lips, the world around me began to feather. "We're doing everything we can," but they faltered, anguish reflected in their gaze. "But what?" I demanded, fury bubbling up an inescapable cascade of dread igniting the air between us. "Are you telling me he might not make it? He's stable for now, but this isn't the end. There are underlying issues we didn't anticipate. There are choices to make." The attendant's voice wobbled, each word tumbling forth like a stone ricocheting across a quiet pond, sending ripples of hopelessness through me. "Choices?" I echoed, my voice laced with confusion and fear. "Like what?" "I'm not ready to lose him." My knees felt weak, threatening to give way beneath me, yet I found myself grasping the edge of the table as if it could somehow lend me strength. "We need to address his wishes, as well as your family's," the attendant continued slowly, their eyes never leaving mine, searching for an understanding in the dust of shock. "There's a possibility he may not want to continue aggressive life-saving treatments." The starkness of the words ricocheted in my mind, a poignant reminder that mortality had settled at our table with a sinister grace. "For you to decide," I spat, my voice lifting, fueled by panic. "He's not done fighting. He can't just give up." The attendant shook their head gently, a mixture of empathy and solemnity woven into the fabric of their expression. "It's not about giving up, it's about honoring his wishes. You need to think about what he would want." The air thickened, a veil of uncertainty wrapping tightly around my heart. What was my father's wish? The thought felt immovable, a puzzle whose pieces were jumbled up and scattered. At that moment, memories flooded into view, his laughter ringing through the house, our long conversations about life, the longing in his eyes whenever we spoke about dreams, unrealized moments that felt cut from a different fabric of existence. "What if he doesn't want to go?" I asked, fear draping over my voice like a dark curtain. "What if I don't get the chance to decide?" It's not just about his life. There are layers of suffering that come with enduring uncertainty, and it's essential to think of his quality of life, too, the attendant articulated, their voice lowering empathetically. I felt the room close in around me, the sterile scent of antiseptic mingling with the heavy emotion pressing against my chest. "You don't know my father. He's a fighter. He won't let go. Fighting isn't always the bravest choice, nor the only one," they interjected softly, but I was already spiraling, wrestling within myself as I revisited our history. "Sometimes letting go is a form of love." "Stop." I felt the words tearing free, the sheer weight of emotion coursed through me, knocking the breath from my lungs. "You don't get it. I can't let go. I'm not ready to say goodbye. Not yet." The attendant regarded me with a heavy heart, and a deep sigh escaped their lips. Sometimes, when faced with the unthinkable, hope takes many forms. Their eyes flickered across the room, and in that instant, the real meaning behind their words glimmered. "Hope," I echoed, skepticism clawing at my throat. You mean false hope, don't you? The kind that only makes this worse. There's always a choice, they replied steadily, their gaze unwavering. You may seek a miracle, or you may find a different kind of peace. But as reality twisted painfully within me, a harsh realization dawned. How could I bring myself to choose for him? How could I act on whispers from the darkness when every fiber of my being screamed against it? Just then, the door swung open, revealing the intern's face, concern still carved sharply between his brows. I searched everywhere for you, he said, relief washing over his features. I heard the commotion. What's happening? But the words lurched in my throat as I moved to answer, and a sudden dread gripped me. A fracture in the air warned me that time was slipping, the stark reminder that decisions awaited me. Even as I grappled with the flickering light of hope amidst the dark premonitions of loss that I don't know, I finally managed to whisper, the impending truth wrapping around me like an iron shroud. And as I looked between the two faces, each laden with sympathy and understanding, me heart echoed a haunting question that may have never been meant for me to answer alone. Would I seize this firefly of hope, or allow the darkness to swallow a whole? As they both awaited my decision, the ground beneath me trembled, echoing with the urgency of uncertain futures, the walls closing in with a weight I couldn't fathom. As everything churned within me, the realization struck like a lightning bolt, sharp and searing. I had a choice to make, not just for my father, but for myself. The weight of those moments hung heavy in the air, the echoes of laughter and the warmth of shared embraces weaving seamlessly through my troubled thoughts. It was as if I stood at an intersection with routes splitting off like creeks, each requiring courage, vulnerability, acceptance, and the kind of love that resonates with the deepest truths of life. The intern's gaze never wavered, and in his eyes, I found reflection me own fear mirrored back to me, yet somehow intertwined with a strength I had never recognized. It was this flicker of human connection that began to illuminate the darkness that lay coiled at my feet. You know what he would want? The attendant urged gently. But instead of speaking, I felt the pressure of every emotion rise like the tide crashing against the shore. I closed my eyes, picturing my father. The furrow in his brow when he concentrated, the warm chuckle escaping his lips when he shared a joke, the way his presence made each room feel fuller. I could visualize him steadfast and ambitious, grappling with his own shadows, both fierce and loving. And in that conjured moment, surrounded by the memories that danced just out of reach, I felt a grounding resolve blossom within me, steadying my heart's chaotic rhythm that I think I began hesitantly, my voice trembling yet gaining potency. I think he wouldn't want me to be filled with guilt or regret. He taught me life was about cherishing every moment while we can, about what we cultivate beyond fear. I want to honor his spirit. The attendant nodded, an understanding enveloping us both. That's a beautiful thought, especially in moments of loss, they said softly. As I spoke those words, clarity surged through me, igniting an ember of hope behind the dread that had clawed relentlessly at my chest. I turned to the intern, who regarded me with a mixture of empathy and encouragement. My father wouldn't want to be trapped in suffering. He always said living was about finding joy even amidst the darkest storms. Then perhaps giving him peace is the greatest gift you could offer, the intern replied. The truth echoed, the reverberations swirling around us like a swirling current. This wasn't about surrender. This was about embracing the fullness of life and honoring his legacy. I inhaled deeply, allowing the flickering resolve to guide me. If what lies ahead is meant to be filled with love, warmth, and peace, then I'll choose to let him go. The attendant's expression softened, mirroring the warmth of acceptance I felt blooming within me. Then it is time to speak your heart, they said, and I leaned into the weight of the moment, allowing the air thrum with possibility. I want to tell him that every moment mattered, I murmured, flipping through the pages of our shared life in my mind. That I cherished our fishing trips, our adventures, how he taught me to face the world without fear. I want him to know I love him fiercely, and even if this is the end, It doesn't erase the life we shared. It'll carry it with me always. Go. Say those words that will circle his heart, the attendant urged. But as I stood there, ready to re-enter that room, another thought surged, a quiet yet profound realization. If this decision leads me to his peace, I hope he feels my love still. I hope he knows he isn't alone, that I stepped out of the muted room and returned to the chaotic swirl of the emergency scene. The brightness of the fluorescent lights felt almost blinding against the backdrop of uncertainty. I found my place beside my father's bed, the rhythmic beeping of machines anchoring me once more. "Dad?" I whispered, summoning the strength of all I had wished to say. His eyes remained closed, but as I held his hand, the warmth seeped into my bones, grounding me in love that transcended the confines of his physical body. "It's time to rest now. You've fought bravely, more than I can ever comprehend. You've shown me what it means to live well. I want you to know, you are my compass. Even in parts unknown, you'll guide me through." Tears streamed down my face, a release of all the pain and fear I had clung to for far too long. "If you need to go, I promise it'll be okay. I love you more than words can capture. And because of you, you'll face every challenge with that same courage you've always shown. Thank you for being my father, my hero. Please find your peace. I'll carry you with me always." In that moment, clarity washed over me, and I knew that whatever awaited us, the love we shared would be etched in the fabric of both our lives. The machines around him synced strangely into a rhythmic beat, and I felt the air shift, whispering with unspoken sentiments and fading shadows. And then, something extraordinary happened. A soft flutter, as if awakened by the connection we had for Jedmi, father's fingers twitched, and slowly, a wave of tranquility cast over the chaotic room. Amid the frenzy of activity, a miracle unfolded, his heartbeat steadying as though he had embraced the very essence of my words, allowing the light to penetrate the darkness that had long enveloped him. That I looked up, caught between worlds the frailty of his body and the fierceness of the love surrounding us. In that moment of beautiful clarity, I allowed a single thought to settle. Perhaps the greatest gift we give each other is permission. The permission to love sincerely, to let go painlessly, and to embody hope even when the end feels near. As time continued to slip by, I realized that true connection transcends the mere moments we share. It lives on, blooming with every beat, whispering through the corridors of time. And just as the light from the setting sun danced through the blinds, a tender warmth enveloped me. I smiled softly, feeling both the weight of passing grief and the brilliance of a life enriched by shared moments. I was not saying goodbye. I was transforming love into a timeless promise. "Goodbye for now," I whispered, braving the edges of my fear. "I'll see you in every horizon I chase." In the distance, I could almost hear echoes of laughter, reminding me that a life well lived means finding the beauty amidst loss, where every twinkling star sang a note of hope. And as I stood there, cradling my father's hand in mine, I breathed in the profound possibility of what lay ahead, ready to nurture the love that would forever guide me.